I don't see anything.
You should hear something.
Hear nothing.
All right, well, screw it. We're live. We're live, damn it.
All
Okay.
right.
And let's see. Yeah, let's share that screen. Come on.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, seriously. So much for sharing you the whole YouTube thing. Jeez.
We just have to wing it. The
Yeah.
show must go on.
Yeah, it's already been late enough.
Sweet. Well, nice shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, nice shoes indeed. So let's look at what's in the news. According to the Jamestown Institute, um, so the Yidailu, or Yetpuk as I like to call it, China's answer to the TPP program. Oh, geez, really? No, don't do this to me again. Ew. Oh, yeah. Anyways, China's answer to the TPP is a transcontinental roadway that is supposed to facilitate trade. However, a country's military is to advance its nation's economic and political goals. So is China's military ready to protect the economic interests that will flow through these routes? According to the Jamestown Institute, not yet. What are your thoughts?
None really.
Okay.
Can't make. There's not enough information for me to make too much sense of it. It's one of those things where I probably have to sit back and watch.
All right.
Uh,
Next piece of news, which we already have on the screen, is earlier reporting said that the United Auto Workers and Fiat Chrysler were in labor talks. Things fell apart, and it wasn't until last Thursday that a deal was struck. Just 2 days ago, the United Auto Workers gave General Motors a deadline of Sunday, 11:59 p.m., and if demands weren't met, then they would go on strike. Luckily, a last-minute tentative deal was actually struck.
Great for everyone who cares about General Motors.
Come on, it's America's car company.
Yeah, I didn't realize. So Fiat's under General Motors as well.
Um, Somewhat. I mean, they have a, and they don't have an ownership in GM. They have an ownership in Chrysler, which has like partnerships with GM. So,
Yeah, because it's Fiat Chrysler, right? So I'm just like,
right.
oh, is it related? Because I heard that the Lamborghinis are supposed to be its own company, or they're gonna go public.
Well, they have an IPO, but ultimately Fiat has a major stake ownership in Ferrari.
I just wonder if that had if that brought forth any of these complaints. Because if General Motors owns Fiat and Fiat has a giant stake in Lamborghinis, maybe they're like, hey, you know what? Maybe the IPO is going to do really well, and there's going to be all this money, and that's why everyone's taking this opportunity to complain about it. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're completely separate events. Maybe these workers just tired. Perhaps the wages were depressed due to concerns about the auto industry and the government and et cetera. And since technically, now that we're in a recovery, or we've basically reached a point where the Feds are thinking about increasing interest rates, which indicate that we know our economy is extremely healthy, is they're thinking, hey, now is a good time to complain about everything. But I wouldn't know because I don't really have any shares in General Motors, so I'm not too sure if it's a good thing or bad thing. But if you look at the market, the market's a little bit down from before, so perhaps it's not necessarily a good thing. Perhaps this concern about the labor forces and ability to create new vehicles and sell new vehicles is causing the market to just think twice about General Motors. Hello?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, sorry about
So
that.
this
Huh?
issue actually, I mean, it's been an ongoing issue between UAW and all the car manufacturing industries, or at least the ones that you hear about are the ones up in Detroit, at least. So this isn't necessarily a political move by Ferrari because they're going both after Fiat Chrysler and GM. I think a deal was already struck with Ford, but you're not hearing much about that in the news.
I see. So it's all auto industry workers.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, even less of a concern for me then. Now I know that it's like a industry-wide blanketing effect, so I mean, there's nothing we can really do about it. I mean, unless you did own stocks in that industry, then perhaps costs going to go up from now on, so profit margin across the industry is going to go down a bit.
Not yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, that might be the effect on it.
All right. Well, the oil boom, or well, according to Bloomberg, OPEC's strategy to keep prices low enough to edge out U.S. oil producers is actually working, and they're gaining back some lost market share. So, fill up on your gas soon.
Mm, not necessarily, because they're going to keep it low for a period of time.
Yeah, for a period of time, but once they, I mean, they're pretty much gaining back that market share, and it's only a matter of time before they basically have that monopoly that they once had before, so they're going to jack it up anyways.
But once it goes up, then basically there's new entries into the market, and they'll have to be forced to push it back down.
Maybe.
hmm It's an interesting move for sure. I just wonder the environmental impacts of a very low price oil rate. That's a different story altogether. I can imagine that if we stepped up, if our concerns about environment, um, and global warming and etc. steps up a lot, we might just be forced to shift away from oil altogether, which decreases demand for oil, which
How
basically
many
causes
decades have
the
we been saying that, though?
huh. Well, I don't
Seriously.
know. I'm just saying it's been many decades, and now 97% of all scientists agree, that global warming is a real effect and is a real concern. And perhaps maybe with 97% consensus of all scientists,
Global
incredible in this
warming
field.
has been an issue, what, since the 80s, and then especially in the 90s, and especially now, but hasn't stopped China from polluting. Hasn't it hasn't made us export any of the environmentally saving technology and processes over to China because most of that stuff is either trademarked or copyrighted or has some sort of other technological restriction from release.
hmm
So yeah,
Well, just saying, hopefully, for the good of mankind's ability to inhabit Earth, we might want to move away from oil,
look,
which will
that's
keep the
only going to
prices
be
low.
available for the rich folk who, they're going to pay Elon Musk a bunch of money to, get on one of his SpaceX rockets and colonize Mars or the moon or something. So they're going to leave the rest of us poor folk down here in a polluted Earth.
Yep. So if there's going to be a space colonization project, perhaps it's not too bad to buy the stock right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Move to space. Live. Final frontier? I don't think so. More like the next necessary frontier.
Yeah, well, for right now, the IMF might be approving to use the Chinese RMB as a reserve currency, according to analysts at Citigroup. This will mean that when that happens, it well, what they're projecting is that when this happens, the RMB will actually weaken against the dollar.
Why would that be the case?
I can't remember, man, but that's what the article
Interesting.
says.
Interesting. Are they? Is the IMF saying that the RMB is going to be allowed to be part of the currency, the reserve currency, despite the fact that they are not like they're still manipulating their uh their currency?
Yeah, because even though they manipulated it, they're manipulating it to something that they believe is closer to market rates, which is really weird.
It is kind of weird because then you either market rate or you're not, and if you're close, you're still not market rate. You're still manipulating it, which means that I can manipulate it beyond the market rate at any point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think this move is extremely weird. Perhaps we should start, I mean, the question is, do we also manipulate our currency?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not sure we do it in the same way because like China is like pretty blatant about the way they manipulate the currency. Like we're fixing it to the
Yeah,
dollar.
Oh, I mean,
But
not just their currency, but their entire stock market in general. I mean, that's just the way they do things from a top-down economy.
yeah, it's kind of weird. Don't
And
know what to
moving
say.
along.
Hmm.
Volkswagen may have gotten hit with the consequences of cheating on their emission standards, but only NPR has an exclusive on the aftermarket industry that sells items that modify trucks and cars to perform differently, which can change the emissions readings as well, depending on the settings. So you can buy one of these aftermarket parts that change the performance of your car, but also spew out more emissions. And this thing keeps jumping ahead of me. But anyways, yeah.
Always ahead of you, those computers.
Grr,
It's the singularity, man.
pretty much.
Skynet.
So yeah, Volkswagen emissions aftermarket parts. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? Is this the solution to fix the Volkswagen problem, or the cause of the Volkswagen problem?
No, it's not saying it's a cause or a solution of any sort. It's just saying that we are concentrating so heavily on VW and finding them so much that we're not going after any of these other people that are also polluting the environment as well. Well, I mean, they're not doing it intentionally. They're doing it out of, hey, we're selling parts, and they're going to make your car perform better. But then it's like, hey, yeah, it performs better, but then it spews out more um, carbon
Smog
emissions or
and
whatever, smog,
etc.
and pretty much, yeah. And then like they get to do the same thing VW was doing, except they're, well, not necessarily blatant about it, but it's more like they are, well, yeah, they were both cheating. So it's like once you get ready to do your, annual tests, smog checks as we have in California or whatever, then you change back the settings to something lower or whatever, and it's like, oh, hey, your environment, your car's in environmental standards, yay, and
I
then
think for
you,
the betterment of mankind, we should really avoid these type of products until I would even go so far to say that we should ban these sort of products until we just get the global climate change problem under control. I think it's just such a major concern and such a major issue that perhaps we should do more about it. And just yeah, like people don't take it seriously enough, and I think it needs to be taken more seriously because our cars are spewing so much carbon, and then all these power plants, all these except like all these other like sources, and we have airplanes traveling through the sky spewing tons and tons of carbon into the atmosphere. We're deforesting at record rates, and then the global climate change is causing even more deforestation. We got El Nino coming, one of the strongest storms ever. I'm like, come on, guys, really? Does moving like maybe like a minute faster really change that much for you? And I don't know, that horsepower you could never use, at least not in LA. Perhaps not in LA without getting into massive trouble. So what's the point? Why use these products? I don't get it.
so should we just restrict this in like large cities like LA, New York, San Francisco, where, I mean, let's face it, I mean, these guys are one of the major pollutants. If it's not from the factories, it's going to be from the cars themselves that are just sitting there in traffic, not going anywhere really.
I would say just make it like, kind of like how California and Los Angeles has this fast track thing. They say, you know what, we just make this rule blanketing. We understand that at certain times, the HOV rule, you don't need that many people and the lanes opened up. But you know what? From now on, to drive this lane, you must have fast track, period. You must have this device, period. And it just makes it so much easier to regulate. If there's all these exceptions that makes the law enforcement extremely complicated because like, oh, you know what? Um, you have a polluting car, but then like or a non-polluting car, and this is a non-polluting car, but you install a polluting product, so then the car is regulated, the device is not, so it might make it okay to pollute more. I'm just like, why? Is there really a point? I mean, maybe if you're like a professional race car driver, you need to tune your car up to a certain level of spec and guarantee the MPG is super low. Yeah, make an exception for those type of cars. But in lieu of that, really for consumer, non-professional, non-racing cars, what's the point? And perhaps even racing cars, limited to like the tracks only. Like have a driving car, a daily car, and then a racing car that is just geared to spew out like toxins like no other. But beyond that, I don't know. I think a car is just a mode of transportation get you from point A to point B, and just the side effects and the concern of our Earth right now and habitability is just so great that I just don't think we should be taking chances at this point in time.
Yeah, but you know Americans love their cars so much. I mean, shoot.
Oh yeah,
In
dude, I love
California,
cars. I mean, I love them
Schwarzenegger
too.
didn't come on board. Shoot,
Huh.
we would have had that stupid bullet train, made already. Would just yeah, granted there still would have been delays. There still would have been like expenditures and all that stuff that have gone past their original budget and all that, but still, it would be completed by now with all that crap going on. But no, he comes on board, cuts that off, and then all of a sudden we start a new round of discussions, new contracting company, yada yada yada. I mean, it was delayed for what 8 years. It's ridiculous. Anyways,
I think so. I mean, I thought it was going to be done 10 years ago, really.
it
And
should have
if
been. No, it
I
was
know,
supposed to be done by 2008. But
yeah,
then,
if
yeah,
we had that train, just think about the interstate commerce that can happen. You know, things in San Francisco and things in San Diego, all the way down to Mexico. It's but a short train ride away. That's like crazy. Like all these shops are known to be great. You know, you can, and then, like a lot of times, I don't have too much time to go on vacation or anything. And if Vegas and all these other places are just like an hour away, it's all doable. You know, I can really go on these vacations where I could have like a day of vacation where I go to San Francisco in the morning, chill, check out all these places, and then by evening I'd be back home sleeping. Instead of like a 8 hour drive away, and then by the time I get there, I'm too tired to do anything but sleep, then drive all the way back. I mean, this is amazing. I'm all for it. We should have done it a long time ago.
yeah, well, life sucks. Oh
Huh.
well.
I'm just saying, I would be using this train. I would be using the crap out of this train.
Well, you're in the minority apparently. Oh, we are, I should say. But anyways, Google's parent company Alphabet announced a stock buyback of, and get this, 5,099,9,513.59 on Thursday. Why such a specific number? It's the square root of 26, the numbers of letters in the English alphabet. Numbers games are a Google tradition, just to know.
Thursday? Can I get on it now?
No, you're late on that one.
Ah, damn it. Whoa, that sucked. I
Yeah.
could have made a good amount of money.
And speaking of being late, uh, we've already jumped to the next slide. Mr. Lee Pele got a call from Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency, a college debt servicing company that issued the loan. The problem is they got the wrong guy, and it hit him at the wrong moment when he was trying to finance a wedding ring with his fiancee and buy a house with her. He sued, and the appeals court is saying he is allowed to proceed. Previously, the company argued it had sovereign immunity, which meant they couldn't be sued. A recording of the appeals case can be found on YouTube.
Who has sovereign immunity?
The debt servicing company supposedly claims that they do.
How does that make any sense?
I don't know. They can say whatever the hell they want, I
Are they
guess.
are they claiming the same rights that the United States granted to the Native Americans because they're a loan company?
Um, Pretty much. That's what they're saying.
That's just ridiculous. I don't have anything more to comment than that. I'm just like, yep, no one's really above the law. In fact, even Native Americans aren't above the law. I mean, you look at all the federal
Actually, I mean, if
prosecutions.
you've been on some reservations, supposedly it can get pretty lawless with the lack of law enforcement there.
Yeah, but there's still a form of law enforcement. As long as the
Mm,
if like federally illegal activities cannot be performed on on the on the tribal lands. But still, like they can still do it, and enforcement might be at the local level. But if it reaches the federal level, and the federal government did decide to enact on it and enforce some laws, and they have jurisdiction. Period. I don't understand how the loan would really, even if they did have sovereign rights and whatnot, I don't see how it applies. I
yeah.
imagine the federal law is still above the whatever sovereign thing that you mentioned.
Actually, no. Sovereign immunity, even certain federal laws, well, it's complicated. Technically, we're not supposed to encroach upon the native nations and all that stuff, but we still do, like, say, with drug issues. If there are any drugs being grown on reservations, we technically aren't supposed to go in there, but we still do anyways, I think. But
I
whatever.
think there was an interesting case where that there was an enforcement maybe a couple months back or a few months back that literally seized 14 acres of like illegal substances on grown on federal land, which it basically does say that, you know, like to a certain extent there is some level of respect, but at the same time that the federal government does have like does oversee the tribal ones. There are some issues like state legislation doesn't quite apply to in tribal lands, but federal legislation still applies. I believe that is the the consensus there. And they're also, you know, that on tribal level, each nation is allowed to enforce its own set of laws, in
Yeah.
addition to whatever is granted under federal law. It's almost like its own little state. I guess a good way to think about it, probably its own little state.
All right, moving along. So, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation, or HSBC, has put out their forecast for the economies that will run into trouble. Asia looks weak due to low commodity prices and capital flight, where rich people are finding creative ways to store their money outside the region. They note that
Hmm.
there are bubbles in developed nations where housing debt levels for Northern Europe are historically high, and energy remains a concern.
Makes sense. All that money has to go somewhere. And rich people are experts at finding places to put it.
Yeah.
Swiss bank account, anyone?
And Business Insider takes a look at Allen & Company, the firm that helps bring companies like Facebook to its initial public offering. The reason for mentioning them is Ferrari debuted its public IPO last Wednesday with the firm's help under the ticker RACE, starting
Damn.
off shares at 60.94 before falling to 55.04 before falling back to, well, I'm sorry. Well, they rose up to, well, okay, let me catch myself again. They fell down and they rose back up to 56.38 on Friday. Yeah.
What did it initially start at? I'm actually
Okay,
trying to
I'm
look
sorry,
it
I'm
up.
sorry. Sorry. They started at 1694. Then they immediately fell down at the end of the day to 55.04.
1694 or
Yeah,
16?
6D.
Oh,
60.
okay, 60. Yeah, I was a little bit iffy about the Ferrari opening. I wasn't too sure.
Yeah, well, most people weren't either. So
Yeah.
that's why it fell down all the way to 55.04. But on Friday, it came back up a bit to 56.38. But today, however, it fell all the way down to 55.02.
You know what's interesting about the average and the cost? Oh, it's
What?
Ferrari. My bad. I thought it was Lamborghinis for a minute.
No.
I was like, oh, it's the average volume I'm looking at is so low, like what, 1.79, 13, like 14 million. I was thinking, you know, I for whatever reason thought Ferrari meant Lamborghinis, but I was thinking, yeah, that's like one
No, remember,
Lamborghini, isn't
Ferrari
it?
is owned by Fiat Chrysler. Lamborghini is owned by VW.
That's where the confusion was, just because of the article we were covering about VW before. I get it. Yeah, that's interesting. You know what's interesting about this stock is for now we have a good idea of exactly how much, like, you know, Ferrari's constant makeup of like how much like how well they sell. Actually, we can take a look at the revenue numbers and the profit margins, and you can look at the cost. We can even look at how many Ferraris are sold, and then figure out how much Ferraris truly cost the company.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. I don't have any investment in Ferrari, so even if they tank all the way under, I don't really care either
Maybe
way.
now's your chance.
Huh. I don't know. I'm thinking this is one of those companies I'm gonna say clear of for a bit because there's no performance metrics. I don't know how the economy is gonna affect it. I mean, there's like they have an EPS of like 1.6 right now, 1.62, and apparently they're making that much in earnings, you know, per share that's out there. But then apparently the price is like 34 to 85, which roughly means that, you know, the price, you have to divide the price by 34 bucks to figure out how much the earning is. Apparently they're not earning that much. So I'm like, why am I paying so much for this stock? It's apparently already overpriced right from the get-go. And I'm not sure, like, I think the problem I have with Ferrari is that it's such a limited market. There's a like a handful, you know, who's your customer? who do you tailor to? It's like the top 10, top 1% of Americans. And that doesn't say to me like a ton of revenue being spewed forth, you know? And then of these very, very limited clienteles, if they decide to buy a different type of luxury car, then bam, this company is not going to do as well. I much prefer like a company if they're going to do well and then announce IPO that they they tailor to the public. There's a huge much like this is a very focus
They are
brand.
tailoring to a public, the 1% public.
Yeah, I know. That's like 1%. I feel more comfortable if you're tailoring to the 99%. Every one of those 99% is just constantly in love with your product. They cannot live without your product, which is yeah, why I like I like Google, and mainly just because yeah, like can you imagine life without Google right now? In fact, we're even using a Google product, and it's gonna be on another Google channel, a different Google product. I'm like, man, this is hard to imagine life without it, which is why I find it relatively safe to put my money into. But Ferrari, I don't know. I mean, if in the face of global climate change and the concern about gas consumption and the vehicles, if I'm concerned about gas consumption, I want a race car, I'm gonna get a Tesla. If I'm concerned about like saving money, I'm not gonna buy a Ferrari. I'm like, where is your space, Ferrari? I'm not too sure. But I would look into it and I'll wait a quarter and I'll find out what the earnings are and how well they perform, and then I'll based on that information, I'll probably consider to invest in or not. But this is definitely a stock that I'm going to wait a quarter before I even think about it.
All right, well, let's take a look at the weekend review. So,
Nice.
yeah, that's pretty much it. Mer.
Great. I'm saying this is a great week for me, I think. My
Yeah,
stocks are doing
well,
phenomenal-ish.
I mean, that was last year. Everything was in the positive, and gains were pretty good. I think it set records for the quarter. I think. I mean, especially from the way it bounced back up from how badly it was doing previously.
Yep.
But that was last week, and here's today's performance. Sadly, the Dow Jones was down over 23 points. S&P 500 was down nearly 4 points, and only the Nasdaq, however, was up almost 3 points.
Technology. Thank you, Google, for your massive buyback.
Yeah,
Oh, it's just today, or
a lot of the worry was over the whole Federal Reserve upcoming meeting, whether or not rates were going to be raised, all that stuff. But Nasdaq was up mainly because of Apple's earnings reports.
really? How did Apple do?
Good.
Fantastic.
Pretty
Interesting.
much.
Hey, man, keep it up, Apple.
Yeah.
And maybe I will buy your stock. Not your products, but maybe I will buy your stock.
So let's take a look at our portfolio review. So just to let you know, I just ordered a new audio mixer. Should be coming to me on time, as long as they didn't try to ship it using United Parcel Service, or UPS, because their pilots are all going on strike. Independent Pilots Association's executive board received a 99% approval to strike, ending current negotiations and beginning new ones. This, as major rival FedEx has approved to increase the wages of their pilots, just as the holiday shopping season is getting ready to ramp up. Just as a disclosure, I own FedEx stocks, which is why this is in our section.
Fantastic. Good job, FedEx. Way to spur some riots there. This is all tactical.
We got nothing for investing strategies this week. I didn't get a chance to go through any of that. Oh, that's an old link. So let's move on to recommendations. So this week I am recommending Michael Pettis' latest blog entry, Thin Air's Money Isn't Created Out of Thin Air. He's an economist based in China and does a thorough job of explaining China's financial and economic situation with economic theory. All of his blog entries are a long read, but I feel I learn a lot when things aren't flying over my head, that is. So check it out. Oh, yeah. Hey, you know what? I just realized I haven't been given the official
Disclaimer.
thing. Yeah, disclaimer. So, hey, you can read here. We may or not have ownership in positions in the stocks we mentioned on the show. Don't buy stocks based solely off of what you hear from this podcast. And always do your homework and research before buying and investing stocks. Yeah, that's bad of me. I shouldn't have done that. Anyways, this is where our new outro would be going if everything were working correctly, but it isn't.
Damn you, Gremlins!
Yeah.
Gremlins. Oh man, I don't even know if anyone knows what gremlins are anymore.
Yeah, let's stop it right here. Stop.